this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
All cat parents understand the feeling of being totally ignored by your cat and often thinking, does my cat even love me? There's only one solution to solve that, Sheba. Feed your cat Sheba and go from feeling ignored to truly adored in 12 days guaranteed or your money back. Sheba has a menu of products, appetizers, entrees, treats, and even a kitten's menu. So Sheba has a product for even the pickiest eater, like Sheba Puree made with bone broth, a smooth and creamy texture that cats love, or Sheba Grilled, protein-rich formula made with real chicken and seafood. To learn more, check out Sheba.com.
On eBay, every find has a story. Like if you're looking for a vintage band tee, not just a tee, the band tee. You wore it everywhere until your ex-boyfriend stole it. Now you're on eBay, and there it is. Same tee from the same tour. The things you love have a way of finding their way back to you, especially on eBay. Where else can you find that mint trading card you search for everywhere that's out of print? Or your first car, the one you wish you'd never sold? It has to be eBay. Shop eBay for millions of finds, each with a story. eBay. Things people love. Hey, everybody. You may not know this yet, and if you don't, prepare to be blown away. We are creating right now the first ever Stuff You Should Know book. It's called Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, and you can pre-order it now.
That's right. And if you pre-order, everyone, there's an incentive because you get a free gift. And don't worry if you've already pre-ordered, because you can just head on over to stuffyoushouldreadbooks.com. It's a very beautiful little webpage, and it's got all the information. And if you already pre-ordered, can't you just upload your receipt and get that pre-order gift?
Yep, you can, and they will mail it off to you, and you will get it in the mail, and you say, oh, thank you, don't mind if I do. And it's a poster that you will love and cherish and possibly pass on down to your children as an heirloom.
That's right, everyone. We couldn't be more excited about this book. It's really coming together well. It's us through and through, and you can go check out some excerpts at stuffyoushouldreadbooks.com.
Welcome to Stuff You Should Know, a production of iHeartRadio's How Stuff Works.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Josh Clark. There's Charles W. Chuck Bryan over there, and this is Stuff You Should Know, Polio Cast.
That's right. Before we get going, though, we want to tell everyone that we have a book coming out called Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things that you can buy and pre-order online. And pre-orders are it's a very big deal to pre-order the book. I never knew what a big deal it was, but pre-orders are very important for the author.
Are they? I didn't realize they're a big
out.
deal. Now I'm kind of worried.
No, they're a big deal.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess if everybody will go, you won't regret pre-ordering the book. How about that?
And why? Because you get a special gift?
Not only that, you get a special gift for sure. You just go upload your receipt at stuffyoushouldreadbooks.com. But also the book itself is really great too. I think you're going to like it. 26 full, robust chapters that are going to just knock your socks off, and it's 100% stuff you should know.
That's right. And we got great illustrations by Carly Minardo. We had a great writer working with us named Nils Parker.
Yep.
And a great publisher in Flatiron, and we're just super excited about it, and we appreciate your support.
Yep. So you can go pre-order that book everywhere. Okay. Wow, Chuck, we're getting really good at that.
Now let's talk polio.
So
what we're not good at is transitioning.
No, we're not. We never have been.
No.
So polio, I when I was researching this, I kept running across, whenever I typed in polio, that auto-suggest in the search bar, it would say things like, does polio still exist? And it absolutely does. But it's one of those diseases that we're really, really close to eradicating thanks to an extraordinarily robust vaccination campaign. One of the first really big vaccination campaigns in the history of the world. And it was also one of the most successful, too. So much so that we're down to just 3 countries. I believe Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria are the only 3 countries where polio is still endemic, where you can just walk around and catch polio. And there are outbreaks in other countries. We'll talk about exactly why. But it went from this global, worldwide problem at the beginning of the 20th century down to 3 countries. And we're that close to getting rid of it forever from the planet, basically.
Yeah, so, and it's interesting to read about polio and its vaccine during the middle of our own pandemic, with coronavirus and COVID-19 because there's a lot of similarities and overlap. It's interesting.
There's a pandemic on?
Yeah, that's why I haven't seen you in 3 months.
I know. Are you getting used to it yet?
I mean, sure, just as anyone gets used to something that stinks.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't mean not seeing you. I mean everything, but sure, that's a part of that.
Gotcha.
It's for sure a part of that.
But it is weird talking about it for sure because there are some real similarities for sure.
Yeah, so polio is the disease, but poliovirus is the enterovirus, which is a virus of the intestinal tract, which is an RNA virus like COVID-19. But the disease itself, like COVID, is the sickness. Polio is the disease, as coronavirus is the poliovirus. I mixed that all up, but I think it's right.
So coronavirus is to COVID what poliovirus is to polio.
Yeah, that's the cleaner way to say it.
Right. And then apparently polio specifically, if you say, this person, my grandfather had polio, you're not talking about just a polio infection. There's a specific kind of disease that you can get from the polio virus where it attacks your central nervous system and can cause all sorts of problems. And that specifically is what somebody's saying when they say they had polio, which is in that case called poliomyelitis, which is what people are talking about when they're talking about polio, the disease.
Yeah, because a lot of people got the polio virus, didn't know it, had no symptoms. Your body kicks into gear. That immune system just fights it off. You got those antibodies for life, and that's it. That happened a lot. But yeah, like you said, if you get polio, that means that it hits your central nervous system. And we'll get more into detail about all this. But poliovirus is where it colonizes is in the throat and the digestive system.
Right.
And we're talking about your feces being contaminated or infectious and contaminated, and your saliva, depending on how you get it.
So there's basically two ways to pass it along, either with your poop or with your saliva. And the fecal transmission is much more prevalent, especially in the developing world, because of poor sanitation. Yeah. And like if you look at just the natural history of the virus, of the polio virus, its ideal is to just replicate, right? That's the whole purpose of a virus, is just make as many copies of itself as possible. And so living in the water, the drinking water supply, and then infecting people, infecting their gut, replicating, being passed as feces back into the water supply to infect other people, but without, really developing symptoms in people. That's ideal for the virus itself. Every once in a while, though, I think in about 1/4 of people who become infected, the polio virus will enter the bloodstream. It'll leave the gut and enter the bloodstream and will produce what's called viremia, where it infects the blood, it starts to infect other organs, and those people will develop flu-like symptoms for a couple of days. That's still not that bad, probably nothing we would have mounted a global eradication campaign against. It's just that in a very small proportion of people who become infected, the polio virus not only infects the bloodstream, it actually travels to the central nervous system and attacks that. And then that is the real problem that comes from polio, what we were talking about earlier, poliomyelitis.
Yeah, and no one knows why that happens. No one knows. I mean, basically, they just think it is completely random. I mean, that seems to be the case of whether or not you get the paralytic version or not. It is not many people, but when you spread those numbers out, it can be a lot of people. So when you look at numbers like 0.5% of everyone infected have paralysis, if you look at a human population, that's a lot of people.
Right. Just that very small percent of everybody or a ton of people around the world and for centuries have, an infection, it does add up big time for sure. Enough so, and so not just the number also, Chuck, but just the devastating effects that polio can have, poliomyelitis can have on a person. It's a really bad jam because not only can it cause what's called acute flaccid paralysis, where your motor neurons or your muscles are attacked so that you can't use your muscle and your limb starts to wither, or maybe you just become fully paralyzed. It can also travel to your brain and affect things like your swallowing reflex or breathing. And so it can very, very easily kill you when it starts to progress to the central nervous system phase of poliomyelitis.
Yeah, and there's no treatment for polio. And we'll talk about the vaccine here in a minute to a great extent. But it's just like any other virus. You let it run its course. Your body will probably do the right thing and step up and fight it back and not let it get to your bloodstream. But like you said, even if it gets to your bloodstream, you might just get sick.
Right.
But that 0.5% chance that you actually have the paralytic version, there is no cure for that.
No, which is weird. I was like, so what? You're just a goner if you get poliomyelitis, or that's what the case was. And apparently your body can still fight it off. You can get poliomyelitis. And if you receive the proper care, one of the better inventions to combat polio is called the iron lung, which would breathe for you using a bellows and negative and positive pressure to move your chest up and down. Like that could keep you alive long enough to give you a chance for your body to fight off the infection with your immune system. But like, that's not a cure. That's just keeping you alive long enough for your body to fight it off. It was really surprising to me that there's still to this day no treatment for polio.
Yeah, I can't help but think of the Big Lebowski when I think of iron lungs.
Who is in an iron lung in that?
Remember when they go to visit they think the kid stole the car? Or they found it. They found the kid's schoolwork in the back of the car, and they go to his house, and it was this former TV writer who's inside, and he's in an iron lung. I
genuinely don't remember that part. I'm sure I'm being shouted at by some of our listeners, but sorry.
Okay. It was played for laughs.
The one I think of is Ralph Macchio in The Outsiders after he gets burned from running in that house to save those people.
Was he in an iron lung?
That's what I thought. And so I looked it up to verify, and there's no mention of it. So I guess when I was a kid, I just made up that Ralph Macchio is in an iron lung in The Outsiders.
If I'm not mistaken, he was just had I guess what you would call a respirator today.
Okay. But wasn't
maybe
he
they were called respirators
down?
back then. Yeah, I think he was face down in traction and suspended and on a respirator. If I'm not mistaken.
Well, my tiny little impressionable brain translated that into an iron lung.
Yeah, that's okay. Stay gold.
My brain hasn't gotten much better, Chuck.
Sure it has.
So you can survive. You can fend off a polio infection, even with poliomyelitis. But the problem is that it very frequently would not let you survive. It would kill you. And so, like we said, just mounting this campaign became kind of paramount. But polio is tough because they think it's such an old virus. They think it's been around for a very, very long time. And that's kind of evidenced by the fact that polio is it's only humans that it lives in and tries to replicate in. It's not like other viruses where there's like reservoir animals that it can hang out in and just basically stay alive until it can infect a human. It's just humans, basically. Although there was a case in 1966 of some chimps becoming infected from humans with polio. Isn't that something?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. And if you need to go over viruses again, folks, look no further than the recent Stuff You Should Know Classic from March 20th, Virus Talk with Josh and Chuck.
That was from March 20th?
The re-release. What do we call those classics?
Oh, gotcha. Selects.
Specials? Selects?
Aren't you like one half of this podcast?
I am, but I call them classics in my brain. I don't know what the official branding is.
Selects.
Yeah.
Like we have hand-selected this classic episode.
Yeah, classics.
I think if you scramble the word selects, classics is in there somewhere, but it's misspelled.
So. But yeah, that one just came out recently, so that'll catch up on what a virus is. But should we take a break and talk a little bit about the ancient history, perhaps, of polio?
Yes.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody.
Wanna learn about a pterosaur and call it pterodactyl? How to take a perfect poop and all about fractals. Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, the Lizzie Borden murders and the cannibal runs. Don't explain everything to your brain explodes. It's Chuck and Josh. It's stuff you should know. Word up, Jerry.
The springtime thaw is finally here. Flowers are blooming, days are longer. We're saying yes to more plans and finally getting outside, running, walking, just moving again. It's the perfect time to upgrade your everyday go-tos with Bombas. Take Bombas sports socks. They're super comfortable and designed with sport-specific tech for running, cycling, yoga, hiking, you name it. I use them to run in, and I can tell you they work beautifully. So head over to bombas.com and use code SYSK for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com, code SYSK at checkout.
So you're considering getting a home security system, but you want something that fits your space. Well, with ADT Blue, it's easy to customize a system that's right for you and set it up yourself. Just pick the kit and monitoring plan that makes sense for your home.
Yeah, well, let's say you're worried about package theft right off your front porch. The ADT Plus app can walk you through setting up a new doorbell camera kit. Once it's installed, ADT Pros can help you keep tabs on it 24/7, or you can manage it yourself from the ADT Plus app.
That's right. There are no long-term contracts, so you can change your monitoring plan whenever you want. The flexibility doesn't end there either. You can add to your system as you need with things like extra cameras or motion sensors.
Some life decisions are hard, but thanks to ADT Blue, you can get DIY trusted ADT home security in a snap. Head to ADT.com/BLU to build your system today. And to find out more about home protection, check out a new episode of Grown Up Stuff with security expert Joe Mazza, out now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, so I mentioned ancient history. We don't know exactly where polio started because old diseases have shoddy record keeping.
Sure.
They just didn't keep up with stuff like they do now. But we do, if you looked at some of the mummies in ancient Egypt, you might see some limb deformities that could have been polio.
Yeah.
There are paintings on walls and things that maybe could be polio, but this is us extrapolating this from a modern lens. Those limbs could have been smashed in a, heavy object accident as well. You never know.
A combine accident.
Well, I was going to say that, but they didn't have combines.
So a barge accident. How about that?
Okay.
So over the years, people were studying polio. And I mean, we kind of started to get a pretty good handle on it. We didn't understand what viruses were, so we didn't know it was a virus until the 19th or 20th century. No, the 20th century. I think 1908, our old friend Carl Landsteiner, who developed blood types, was also the one of the two people who identified the polio virus in 1908. But other people had contributed up to that point, like it was recognized as being an epidemic disease, that there were outbreaks, that kind of stuff. But everybody was kind of okay with polio existing. Like, it was not something that we were happy about, but nothing that, there was this great urgency to cure until about the beginning of the 20th century. And they think that people living together, in close quarters, urbanization, and better sanitation led to polio outbreaks that hadn't been seen before, because the better sanitation produced a population that had not been exposed to poliovirus.
Yeah, that seems counterintuitive.
It does, but it makes sense, because if you've got a virgin population, that thing can just hop from person to person to person. Whereas if you have an endemic population where any proportion of the population is already immune from having been exposed to the virus before. Because don't forget, remember, we said a lot of people, most people, I think 75% of people who are infected never even show any signs or symptoms. So if you don't have people like that anymore because of improved sanitation, but you also don't have a vaccine program, you've got a virgin population that a virus can just run rampant in. And that's
sounds familiar.
It does. That's what started happening in the early 20th century, and it started scaring the bejesus out of parents because it was largely affecting kids.
Yeah, and it happened in clusters because it was so easily transmitted. And like you said, with the virgin population, there would be these big outbreaks, and that causes panic with parents especially.
Yeah.
In 1916 in the U.S., 6,000 people died from polio and about 27,000 paralytic cases. 1952, 21,000 paralytic cases.
And also, Chuck, we said in our book, you remember in the Mr. Potato Head chapter, that polio outbreak is what made Mr. Potato Head one of the first big toys.
That's right.
Because so many kids were stuck at home that summer because of a polio outbreak.
That's right. And that's exactly what happened because, kind of mirroring what we're seeing now is they would shut down parks and swimming pools and schools and public events. And America rallied behind it back then and said, yeah, that's what we should do for the good of the public. It's not happening now, unfortunately, but back then everyone got on board. Between, I think, 250,000 and 650,000 Americans were alive at any given time in the 20th century that had lifelong issues caused by polio.
Right. That's a lot of people. I mean, that's a real problem, That's not over the 20th century. That's at any given point in the 20th century, right?
Yeah, at any given point.
So you can kind of understand why around then, especially when people were seeing entire classrooms of children struck down, with polio, some of whom, went on to have lifelong mobility issues, some of whom died. That scared parents a lot, and it scared everybody so much so that it kind of laid the groundwork for this big national and actually an international push toward coming up with, if not a treatment, which they tried at first and found that was not happening, then a vaccine for polio. And that's exactly what we did. We being humans.
And a big driver for this vaccine was a little organization called the March of Dimes, which was originally founded in 1938 by Franklin Roosevelt. It was called the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. And I never knew this, but they had a march and people would send dimes as donations to the organization. And that's why it's called the March of Dimes.
Right.
It's amazing.
And because of that, because of all those individuals sending in dimes to the March of Dimes or to the Infantile Paralysis Foundation, that laid the groundwork for the financial support for all of this research that was going on, specifically for the research of one of the guys who came up with a vaccine for polio, because we actually have more than one. But the most famous of them all was Jonas Salk, who came into the picture in about 1947. And because of those dimes that were contributed by average everyday people, because that money directly funded his research, he very famously refused to patent the vaccine that he came up with for polio and just said, this belongs to the world. Yeah,
just like Farmer Bro. Same.
Exactly.
Same morals, right?
Right.
So this is a good chance. I'm glad when we get to do shows like this because Jonas Salk gets so much credit, and deservedly so, as a genuinely great human that walked the planet. But there a lot of people had chipped in over the years to get this vaccine where it was, and we get a chance to talk about those people now, which is always fun. In the 1940s, late 1940s, John Franklin Enders, Thomas Huckle Weller, and Frederick Chapman Robbins.
All three serial killers.
That's right. They figured out how to grow the poliovirus culture in a lab, which if you want a vaccine, that's the first big step is to grow that culture in a lab. Mm-hmm. And they won in 1954 for those efforts. They won the Nobel Prize in Medicine, which is great.
Yeah, it was. So the first, that was a huge first step, like you were saying. The people had tried to create a vaccine even before that first step, though. I guess the old-fashioned way. Brody and Colmer, John Colmer, I don't know Brody's first name, but when they were working together, they created a vaccine that actually killed 5 of their 10,000 test subjects, which was not, it wasn't good. And it actually kind of set the whole vaccine movement back a hint, but astoundingly, it didn't kill it. And rather than saying like, no, we're not going to try this, people looked at polio cases and said, this is so bad, we need to keep pushing forward despite that. And so by the time Salk came along and started working on his vaccine, people were already a little jumpy about the idea. And it was made all the more so that he was trying an unproven form of vaccine, whereas most vaccines used attenuated virus, which is it's live, but it's a weakened version of the virus, and it's in a it's in a much smaller dose. What Salk was suggesting, what he wanted to use was an inactivated virus, which is it's dead in the sense that it can't replicate any longer. It's been treated with formaldehyde, but it's a huge dose of it. So if it's not dead, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, and it was a big deal at the time because it was new science, and a lot of scientists said that I don't think you could administer this much, even kill the virus safely. Mm-hmm. And so what you had was a couple of different things going on, a couple of potential pathways to take was give a little bit of that weakened virus that's still alive to kids, which we know is going to infect them with the virus. So it's going to generate those antibodies, but hopefully it's not going to be strong enough to get to that central nervous system point of infection.
Right.
Or superdose them with this inactive virus, and that's going to cause antibodies in the blood. So that will 100% prevent polio from happening. That will keep it from going to the central nervous system. They knew that.
Right.
And that's great news, but boy, you better be sure that virus is perfect. Because if it's not, then you're in big trouble.
Right, and not only that, that's a big risk with it. But if you do it right, the risk goes very close to zero. The other problem with it is because it produces antibodies in the bloodstream, that leaves out the gut, which means that you could still be infected by polio and colonize your gut and replicate and be passed in your feces. But because you have those antibodies in your bloodstream, it's going to protect you from ever developing poliomyelitis.
Yeah, they were trying to stop the disease, not stop the virus.
Right. Well, it depends on the paradigm. Like the one that actually infects you with polio is going to prevent any poliovirus from ever colonizing your gut ever again. So it depends on which approach you're coming from. And over the course of a couple of decades, both came into use enough around the world that we actually have come close to eradicating polio thanks to this combination of both of them.
Yeah, so Salk developed a two-part test that he used on himself and volunteers. And then in 1954, you had to get a massive PR campaign behind this, in a big way, because they had to vaccinate 1 million children. They were called the polio pioneers, and even though it looked good, it's still a big deal to vaccinate 1 million kids with this new vaccine that you're not quite sure about yet. But they figured that was their only choice. They were like, we can't just let polio continue to thrive and paralyze and kill our children. We have to take a chance with these pioneers.
Right. So during this polio pioneer experiment, it was actually, from what I saw, the first double-blind in a major public health study. So no one knew whether they were getting the placebo or not, or getting the vaccine. But one segment of this group of polio pioneers, 200,000 of them, were given a vaccine that wasn't inactivated. So it was a huge dose of still alive polio vaccine. And 40,000 of those 200,000 people came down with polio. 200 of them were kids who developed paralysis, and 10 died. And this was huge, huge. Like, can you imagine a setback like that where 200,000 kids were given a vaccine that hadn't been done properly? Like, that would just stop it in its tracks now. But again, because polio was so bad, America at the time was feeling very utilitarian and said, 200 kids developing paralysis is horrible. But without this vaccine, in 1952, 27,000 had developed paralysis. So again, they still push forward, even with the government temporarily suspending vaccination programs, or this test, I believe. American parents still move forward and vaccinated their kids anyway with this Salk, what came to be known the IPV, or inactive poliovirus that Salk developed.
That's right. The inactivated poliovirus vaccine,
right,
which is still around today, and again doesn't prevent the infection, but it does prevent the bloodstream from moving it on to the central nervous system.
Right. Which is that's poliomyelitis. That's again what people mean when they say polio.
That's right. Should we take another break and talk about the other vaccine?
Yes.
All right. We'll be right back to talk about the cheaper vaccine right after this.
Want to learn about a pterosaur and call it pterodactyl? How to take a perfect poop and all about fractals. Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, the Lizzie Borden murders and the cannibal runs. Don't explain everything to your brain explodes. It's Chuck and Josh. This stuff you should know. Word up, Jerry.
Hey, everybody. Here's a fact for you. In the United States, there is a break-in every 26 seconds, and that means that somewhere right now, an intruder is getting closer. And the problem with most security systems is that they only alert you after the break-in has started, and that's too late.
Well, that's what makes SimpliSafe different. They use alerts. SimpliSafe's U.S.-based live agents, they identify threats on your property and help deter them before they actually break in. So the intruder never gets into your house. The crime is stopped before it even starts.
That's right. And another great thing about SimpliSafe is they have no long-term contracts. They give you peace of mind and great value with their monitoring deterrence plans because they just start at about $1 a day.
Yeah, SimpliSafe sent us a setup years back, and I still use mine every day.
Yeah, and apparently setup, you can do it by yourself in under 30 minutes, so it's a really good value and it doesn't take long.
So if you want to experience the SimpliSafe peace of mind, you can take advantage of the SimpliSafe discount offered to Stuff You Should Know listeners. Right now, you can get 50% off your new system by visiting simplisafe.com/stuff. That's half off at simplisafe.com/stuff. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
Work can be a little weird. One minute you're in a meeting that could have been an email. The next you're trying to decode corporate jargon that somehow means nothing. And don't even get us started on the quick sync that turns into a 45-minute deep dive.
Yeah, well, the truth is figuring out your career isn't always straightforward. Whether you're trying to grow, pivot, or just stay relevant, it can feel like you're navigating it all on your own. Well, that's where LinkedIn comes in.
That's right. LinkedIn can help you grow your career, helping you confidently navigate your path with insights, ideas, and inspiration from your professional community. You can stay up to date with the latest trends in your field, connect with people who get it, and discover opportunities tailored to your goals, your experience, and what actually matters to you.
Whether you're looking for something new or just trying to grow where you are, LinkedIn gives you the tools and connections to move forward with confidence. Because LinkedIn is the network that works for you. Visit linkedin.com/knowstuff to learn more. All right, so there's another guy who is somewhat famous, but not nearly as famous as Jonas Salk. Salk, he announced his findings on CBS radio and became like a household name overnight. I think America was kind of smitten with him because he had tested the vaccine on himself, his wife, his 3 sons, sterilizing his syringes in his own kitchen. And he was very much derided by his main rival, a guy named Albert Sabin, or Sabin. I'm not sure which way you pronounce it. I don't think it matters at this point.
Sabine?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let's go with Sabine. So Albert Sabine, he came up with what we were talking about, the other kind of vaccine, an attenuated virus that had a lot of advantages over Salk's virus or Salk's vaccine. But because Salk had kind of beaten him to the punch in America, Sabine was forced to kind of go outside of the United States to test his vaccine. And he ended up testing his in the USSR, I believe.
Yeah, and like you said, his was attenuated, so it was live, and it was actually a really infectious strain. But something about this strain, it just seemed to not go to that central nervous system and infect the central nervous system nearly as much.
Right.
So he went to the Soviet Union, tested more than 10 million people there in the 1950s, and they said, whatever Russian is for thumbs up, way to go.
Greatsky.
Great job, Greatsky. And it was widely used and came into the U.S. in the 1960s. So then all of a sudden we have two vaccines. Mm-hmm. We got the IPV that you have to inject. At first they thought it had to be boosted every few years, but it was in fact a forever injection, the best kind.
Right.
It was very safe. There were no systemic reactions. The cost was high, which was kind of a problem at the time,
right.
As opposed to the lower cost of the OPV, which was oral, and you gave it on sugar cubes.
Right. So there's a lot of advantages with this OPV over the IPV. And as a result, between the advantages, I mean, just lower cost alone would make public health officials be like, well, we should go with that. But that whole, the Qatar incident where 200,000 kids were accidentally given active polio, that really kind of shook people in Salk's vaccine enough that his vaccine got supplanted by Sabine's OPV, oral poliovirus vaccine. And that became the standard in the United States from about the early 60s up to, I guess, 2000, basically, right?
Yeah, and I think we failed to mention there were three serotypes, type 1, type 2, and type 3. And the OPV, you could get all three of those types onto that one sugar cube,
right?
Which is great. And if you're infected by one of those serotypes, it doesn't give you antibodies against the other two.
Right.
And a vaccine for one doesn't protect against the other two. So you have to get inoculated against all three.
And Sabine, remember, he found a strain of poliovirus that was very infectious, but didn't attack the central nervous system very, very much. And he actually identified strains for each one of those types that kind of fell into that category. But the thing is this, remember we said that with an activated or an attenuated live virus, you are actually being given poliovirus and you are being infected with poliovirus. And so that means that you are shedding poliovirus in your feces. So let's say you want to start a vaccination campaign in an area that has poor sanitation and a lot of resistance to a vaccine campaign. Well, if you can just get in there and vaccinate a few people, they're going to go and shed that poliovirus in their feces. And because it's this weakened strain, that weakened strain will go on and infect other people in the community who drink this tainted drinking water, and they will kind of become what's known as passively vaccinated by this. So it was another advantage in developing areas as well. But there were some major problems with this vaccine and still remain today, mainly because this is a live virus that you're being infected with on purpose.
Yeah, and because it's live, even though it's weak, I don't know about the word rare, but in very few cases, and they think immunodeficiency had a lot to do with it, you could contract polio, you could get the paralysis, and you could possibly die. That was known as VAP, vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis. And that's no good, even if there are very few cases. That's not great for your PR campaign.
But not only that, because it was a live virus that could still replicate, they also found that when it entered your gut and colonized there, sometimes it could undergo a type of mutation so that what came out the other end in your feces was actually basically a new version of the strain that you had been given. And sometimes it was way more infectious. Sometimes it was way more deadly. And that would be what you pooped out into the local water supply. And at first, again, compared to like the wild strains of the 3 types of poliovirus that were out there in the world, at first, like, it didn't matter. Like, that happened infrequently enough that just keep going with this oral vaccine because it's really, really working. But as it became more and more effective and fewer people had polio, the idea that you were giving them a vaccine that could actually produce a virulent strain became a real problem. And as a result, people said, well, wait a minute, we need to figure out what to do about this vaccine because we really need to start figuring out how to phase this out.
That's right. And is this where the Dutch entered the picture?
I believe so.
Yeah, and you might think, what do they have to do with it? They were studying Salk's IPV this whole time.
Right.
They were using it. They were researching it. They were funded by their own government to do so. And they made it more robust, basically, against all 3 types, which is great. And the big thing they did, though, is they found out how to reduce the cost, because the cost was one of the big drawbacks of Salk's version. And one of the big parts of the cost, very sadly, is they had to import 5,000 rhesus monkeys every year in the Netherlands alone. 5,000 monkeys in just the Netherlands. So in the 70s, these 2 people named Paul van Hemert and Anton van Wiesel, they figured out how to grow cultured monkey kidney cells, which is a great record title, I think.
Oh, I think so too. I hadn't thought about that.
I don't know the band.
The band is the Plastic Beads.
Okay. And their new album, Cultured Monkey Kidney Cell?
Mm-hmm.
So they figured out how to grow these on plastic beads in steel flasks.
Okay.
And then grow that poliovirus on the kidney cells. So all of a sudden, you didn't need 5,000 rhesus monkeys. You just needed a few of them. And you didn't have to spend, A, you didn't have to kill all those monkeys, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And B, you didn't have to import all those monkeys and that expense. And that saved a ton of money. And they could all of a sudden pump out these IPV shots at a really reduced rate.
All right. So now all of a sudden, Salk's original, or actually new improved version of Salk's original vaccine is competitive to the OPV price-wise. I think it's still way more expensive, but much less way more expensive than it was before. But then also, like, it prevents poliomyelitis from happening. So what public health officials started to realize, by the way, the U.S. started to switch back to the Salk vaccine, the IPV, in 2000.
Yeah.
And what public health officials realized is that this combination of the 2 could actually wipe polio out of existence. For one, you could prevent poliomyelitis from ever happening in your population with the IPV. But then also, if you could knock out polio in the wild with the OPV and keep the population that you're inoculating from developing these vaccine-associated viruses, right? The mutated viruses that can come out the other end. You could actually wipe polio out of the wild. And as a matter of fact, one type of polio, I believe it was type 2, was eradicated. They figured out sometime around 1999. And then I believe in 2015, they officially declared type 2 polio virus eradicated. It's just gone. That it's just not in the wild anymore. Because it died out because it couldn't find a host to transmit and replicate, and we killed it. We got rid of it.
From poop, though.
That's right.
Like, that's literally in 1999, the last polio dump happened.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy because you do, at least in the United States, you associate polio with like the early 20th century, you know?
Yeah, so the last polio poop came out, didn't hook up with anyone that didn't have immunity. And the good news about type 2 going away was, remember how we were talking about the VAP, the VAPP situation with the OPV? Mm-hmm. It's getting confusing.
Yeah.
Type 2 was the part most likely to cause that vaccine infection, that vaccine-derived infection. So with that out of the way, you were just left with the OPV for types 1 and 3, which is way more safe and effective.
Right. And I saw that type 3 had actually been declared eradicated as well. I think that it's made some sort of weird comeback in Nigeria, but that I believe it was declared eradicated in 2019. I'm not sure if they double back on that or not. But either way, there does seem to be this idea that we could, and we're right there on the cusp of being able to eradicate polio. And there's a difference between eradicate and eliminate. Eradicate is where there's 0 cases, to where the only polio that exists is like in a lab or in vaccinated form. Eliminate is where it just doesn't exist on Earth anymore. And for all we know, type 2 poliovirus has been eliminated. But type 3 and type 1, right, has been or are close to being eradicated. For example, for all types of polio, in 1988, not very long ago, in 1988, there were 350,000 cases worldwide still. So there's still a lot of polio. In 2017, it was down to 22 worldwide. So we're making like great headway. But unfortunately, the CIA seems to have really gotten in the way and set polio eradication back by decades from what I've read.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. Did you see that Scientific American article I sent?
I didn't get to that.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
So when the U.S. was hunting for Osama bin Laden, one of the ways that they tried to find him was through a fake vaccination campaign. And it wasn't for polio, it was for hepatitis C. But they basically got a public health official to mount a fake vaccination campaign to gain entry to the bin Laden compound or suspected bin Laden compound and basically take DNA samples of the children there while they were vaccinating them. And they I guess that didn't happen. It didn't. It wasn't successful. I don't remember how they found out he was in there or not. But the fact that the word got out that this fake vaccination campaign had been used as a ruse by the CIA completely undermined all other vaccination campaigns around the world in places that were already wary of the CIA. Because remember, polio is endemic in 3 places: Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And none of those 3 places really have a great impression of the CIA. So legitimate public health vaccination campaigns in those countries were totally delegitimized in the eyes of the local population and the local governments. And in fact, some vaccination workers were murdered and kicked out of countries directly because of that ruse that the CIA had undertaken. And from what I read, they say that it set this eradication campaign for polio back literally decades because it is built around public trust that these scientists who are injecting them with stuff, these American scientists, are trustworthy, and that trust has been lost, sadly.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts that it can have that kind of ripple effects like that, and now we're going to have to live with polio at least another 20 years probably?
Sad.
It is sad. Polio's sad. You got anything else?
I got nothing else.
Well, that's it for polio, everybody. Soon, that's it for polio. And since I said that, it's time for listener mail, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm going to call this, just correcting us on some stuff. How about that?
Okay.
Sorry, guys, I'm a bit behind. So this is somewhat old news, but since it involves the Byzantine Empire, perhaps old is relative. In the Stuff You Should Know episode, How Flamethrowers Work, Josh says, in reference to the Greek fire, something like the Byzantines, who we know as Turks, were most notorious for using this stuff.
I didn't say that.
He said you said it at 5:31.
That sounds made up. That's a made-up timestamp.
The Byzantines were not Turks, in the sense that white Afrikaners in South Africa are not Zulus. The Byzantines were Greek-speaking colonists from the Roman Empire. The capital of the Roman Empire was moved to Byzantium in 330 AD by Constantine the Great. Mm-hmm. And the strategic port was duly christened and Christianized for a while, at least, as Constantinople.
Yeah, not Istanbul.
The Byzantines were, much as the Afrikaners were with the Zulus, at odds with the indigenous Turks for most of their history, until they were overthrown by the latter in the mid-15th century. The name Constantinople was changed officially to Istanbul in 1930, but had been in use by the non-Greek-speaking natives there for centuries, even before the city fell to the Turks in 1453. Why the heirs of the Roman Empire spoke Greek rather than Latin is similar to why modern South Africans speak English mostly rather than Afrikaans. There's probably a couple of whole shows you could do about the convoluted colonial histories touched on above. And that is from Conrad Berube.
Thanks, Conrad. I appreciate it. I still dispute that I said anything as ridiculous as what you say I said, but regardless, I'm glad it resulted in that top-notch email. If you want to be like Conrad and send us a top-notch email, you can do that. Send it off to stuffpodcast@iheartradio.com.
Stuff You Should Know is a production of iHeartRadio's How Stuff Works. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
You know, you could be adored by everyone and still completely ignored by your cat. Trust me, I know. But if you feed your cat Sheba, you can go from being ignored to truly adored in 12 days, guaranteed, or your money back. Sheba has a full menu of products, appetizers, entrees, treats, even a kitten's menu. It's so cute, so Sheba has a product for even the pickiest eater. Like Sheba Puree, it's made with bone broth, they are chef-inspired flavors, it's got a smooth and creamy texture that cats love, and contains no corn, wheat, soy, or artificial flavors. It's food that your cat's gonna love. To learn more, check out Sheba.com. That's SHEBA.com.
Introducing the all-new Mazda CX-5, featuring more connection.
Hey Google, where's the nearest Pilates class?
Safety that has your back. More discovery on the scenic routes. More passion in the details. And more control in changing weather. The all-new Mazda CX-5. More to move every side of you. See it in 5 films at MazdaUSA.com/5sides.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC. Sequences shortened and simulated.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.